Welcome, everybody, to Indiana Football Weekly on thegruelingtruth.com. Indiana Football Weekly is brought to you by BetNow.eu. Use the promo code TRUTH100 to get a cashback bonus on your first deposit. I'm your host for Indiana Football Weekly, Mike Goodpaster. Right now, I'd like to welcome in from Indiana University. He's our beat writer, or one of our beat writers. Help me welcome to the show, Cole Hanna. How you doing, Cole?
Doing pretty good, Mike. Can't complain.
All right, you could, because the weather sucks here right now.
Yeah, it's Indiana weather for you. I've grown used to just poor weather.
Yeah,
it's
but luckily
unfortunately
we'll
been
get
a
off the
common
weather,
occurrence
because
there.
who wants to listen to two people talk about the weather at the start of a show? All right, Indiana 7-2 now with a 34-3 win over the Northwestern Wildcats. Lost Michael Pennix. He was 10 for 15, 162. Looks like he's out for the year. Peyton Ramsey, 7 for 10, 108. The thing I take away from this again, though, is Stevie Scott, 26 carries, 116 yards. And do you think the 26 carries has anything to do with Michael Pennix being out?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's obviously a little bit there that they're going to have to start relying on that run game a little bit more. And I think part of it was just the score. I mean, when you won 34-3, Indiana kind of built up a pretty big lead in that first half, so that led to just, an increased focus on that ground game. Ramsey pretty much came in before halftime and only attempted 10 passes in that game, and, I think it's partly because he didn't have Pennix, and it's partly just because of the score situation. They wanted to rely on that run game, just run the clock down. Ramsey again came in and played well. Hats off to him. This is pretty much the third week in a row he's been called upon, and he's played really, really well in pretty much every appearance. So, when you lose a guy like Pennix, to have a backup quarterback like Peyton Ramsey who stuck around even when he lost his starting job, that's obviously been a huge, huge boon for Indiana. But, I think that loss of Pennix is a big, big deal for Indiana, especially moving forward when they play some, really very good defenses like Michigan and Penn State. And granted, Northwestern was in that same category, but they scored 24 of their 34 points when Pennix was in that football game. So, Ramsey's done, I think, had really, really solid performances, but against subpar defenses for the most part in Maryland, Nebraska in the last few weeks. When you move forward against teams like Penn State and Michigan, that's going to be an entirely different animal defensively. So, I think Ramsey's going to be hard-pressed to try to, move the ball in those defenses, but he's played really well. I think he's had a very, very good season overall, and there's reason to have some confidence in him and what he can do moving forward.
All right, now the defense again. We've talked about this the last couple of weeks. A pair of turnovers in the first half was a difference maker on Saturday night. That, in effect, Northwestern has no offense. But the first came on Northwestern's first drive of the game as I used Tywone Mullen, ripped the ball away from Northwestern quarterback Aiden Smith that set up an eventual Stevie Scott touchdown. The second takeaway was another forced fumble, this one at the hands of IU linebacker Cam Jones, which started Hoosier's offense at the Northwestern 18-yard line. And Indiana's defense, I think, was kind of at a bit of a lull in the takeaway department at the beginning of the season. But since it has rediscovered its old form from the last couple of years where the only time they stopped anybody was when they got a turnover. And while the Hoosiers' defense has been underwhelming this season in regards to big plays and points allowed, it's the takeaways that has ultimately become a difference maker. And if IU's defense can continue to do that, there's no reason they shouldn't have a chance to win all three of those final games.
Yeah, no, I mean, the defense has kind of been maddening at times. I think when you look at them, what's been very odd to me, especially when we look through their last three games, it feels like the defense always just comes out a little slow. Like, they've struggled, I think, at the beginning of a lot of games, and I can't exactly figure out why. And definitely more so against against Maryland and Nebraska. But even against Northwestern, I thought there was just, for really the first two drives, Northwestern, I believe they finished with just under 200 total yards of offense. And they probably had close to 100 of those in their first two drives of the game. It's just, for some reason, it's taken Indiana, just a little bit of time to get acclimated to the game. And then once they do get acclimated, they played really, really well the last few weeks. But like you said, even when Northwestern was kind of putting together some drives and moving the ball, the Indiana defense just came up with timely turnovers, and then after that start to the game, they really were just dominant the rest of the way. Northwestern really had nothing going for them offensively, Now, I think you mentioned, part of that is probably how bad that Northwestern offense is. They don't have any quarterback play that they can really rely on game in and game out. And Hunter Johnson suffering an injury in that game as well, knocked him out of that game. So that's going to be a big factor moving forward for them. And, Aiden Smith has just not been a great player. So, hats off to the Indiana defense. I thought they played a very, very good football game. But, part of that, you've got to take it with a grain of salt because this is probably the worst offensive team in the Big Ten. Maybe them and Rutgers are the only team even in that conversation. So they did what they needed to do. But, moving forward the next 3 weeks, it's going to be a completely different animal. Much better offensive teams are going to play, especially starting with that Penn State game. So they're going to have their hands full in those games.
Yeah, and I brought up Mullen a little bit, and he's a true freshman quarterback. I think he's been as good as any of the Hoosier defensive backs this season. And Saturday night, I think, only further highlighted the kind of presence that he can make on a game. He recorded a forced fumble, a fumble recovery, a tackle, a pass breakup. And like we said, that forced fumble was a huge play. And I think he's one of the few players on IU's roster that has the ability to completely take over a game.
Yeah, he reminds me of a guy they had a few years ago in Rashard Fant, where he came in as a freshman to that team. And, he maybe had a little bit slighter of a build than your typical corner, smaller guy, but he's outstanding in coverage and just seems to make plays. And that's kind of who I think of when I think of T1 Mullen. He's a smaller guy. He's probably 5'10". And by the time he leaves in Indiana, they're probably going to want him to put on 20 to 25 more pounds and really bulk up a little bit. But I do think he's just a playmaker. And he may be small, but he's easily been Indiana's top cover corner so far this season. I think you can make an argument, for a guy that came in and wasn't expected to even be in the starting lineup, he's arguably been their best defensive player of the season. I mean, he's been absolutely fantastic throughout the year. And really at times has been a bona fide shutdown corner where you can almost leave him on an island by himself and he'll find ways to make plays out there. So, I think his play has been super, super encouraging. But again, moving forward, I think it's going to be, I think Indiana's going to play a little bit more high-flying offenses in terms of the passing game. Really, their last few games, you look at Rutgers, Maryland, Nebraska, Northwestern, those are not exactly huge passing offensive teams. So Mullen wasn't exactly challenged very much. I think when you look at a team like Penn State, it's obviously a very good throwing football team, as well as Purdue. Purdue does not have much of a running game. They're going to rely on that passing game, and they're going to throw that ball probably 40 to 50 times when you look at Purdue and what they've done so far this season. So I think Mullen's going to be challenged in those two games significantly more than he has the last few games. And I think Michigan's probably, if Michigan's going to play the way they want to play, it's going to probably be running the ball down Indiana's throat. So that's going to be just a little bit different challenge for Mullen to face. But he's made a lot of plays, whether it be pass breakups, forced fumbles, recovering fumbles. He just seems to always be in the right place at the right time. And for a true freshman, that's just a great, great get for Tom Allen. Anytime if Tom Allen is going to play the defense he wants to play, he needs playmakers, guys that can step up and make a play. And T1 Mullen is a bona fide playmaker.
Yeah, and being he's a freshman, I mean, cornerback's not an easy transition for a guy coming out of high school. I think this is a kid that 3 years from now is going to be a kid that, or 4 years from now, we could see him playing on Sundays by the time this is done.
Oh, yeah, and I don't think there's any doubt about it. And you look at the genes, I mean, he has the genes. He has, brothers and cousins that have played in the NFL. So, he's got that going for him. And, I think when you look at his talent level, I don't think there's any doubt he has what it takes to make it at that next level. Like, he's a smaller player, which, that could hurt him. The NFL seems to be putting an emphasis on some of these bigger corners, but you're still seeing smaller guys really excel and be able to make plays. So, I don't think his size is going to doom him by any means. And I think, like you said, I mean, this is a true freshman right now. For him to be doing what he's doing in the Big Ten right now, and he's far from a finished product, I think that speaks volumes to where he is as a player. He's just simply a huge get for Indiana. And they've had some corner issues, and they've kind of had to cycle in a couple of different corners for, to look at where we were just a few weeks ago following that Michigan State game where they really threw the ball all over us, and it looked like we had huge issues in the secondary. We couldn't stop Lewerke, to where we are now. And, you've got T1 Mullen playing the way he is and how he's been able to step up for a secondary that looked like they were going to have huge, huge issues moving forward, it's super, super encouraging for Indiana. And Mullen's been just an absolute fantastic defensive player. And like you said, the fact that he's a true freshman, it just makes it all the more encouraging.
Well, I think when you talk about where we were at a few weeks ago, we might still be there. I mean, we don't know because we haven't played anybody or beaten anybody. And if you look at this, IU's 7 wins have come against teams that, as of right now, are 16-46. The only good opponents they played, Ohio State blew them out. Ohio State's blowing out most of the teams in the country. Michigan State beat them. Michigan State is not having a great season. And now you take away Michael Pennix. And I think what people miss here is the advantage they had with Michael Pennix over the last pretty much the whole season is as a head coach, you don't want to prepare for a team and have 2 different kind of quarterbacks with 2 different skill sets and not know who's going to play. I think the one concern here now is with them announcing that Pennix is not going to play the rest of the season is the fact that now you're not leaving coaching staffs guessing. They know what they're getting.
Yeah, no, I think absolutely. And I think Tom Allen touched on that in his press conference where he pretty much said, as a defensive coordinator, I know when I was preparing for teams, I hated not knowing who was going to go at quarterback. I hated not knowing which guy to prepare for. And that's been really, unfortunately with Pennix, that's been just a reoccurring theme with him that he's been hurt. And even when he has played, like you said, it's been in situations where they said he's a game time decision and no one actually knows until you see who steps on the field. So I think, like you said, it's a big advantage that Indiana's going to lose. I think the biggest thing is, and I love what Ramsey's done for this team. He's a great, great backup quarterback to have, and he's played well every time he's been called upon. I just think Pennix is much more dynamic as a player. I think what he brings to the table offensively really opens up anything they want to do. He has the arm to make every single throw on the field, and I think he truly does have an NFL caliber arm. I mean, I think when you watch this guy throw the football, you can see a future for him at the next level. I don't think you can say that same thing for Ramsey. I don't think he has the arm to make every single throw. And I think when he's on the field, the offense is a little bit limited. He can run most of the plays, but there's going to be certain things that you can call with Pennix, and Pennix is able to do that Ramsey's just simply not going to be able to do. So the offense is going to be a little bit more limited, and teams are going to be able to now game plan for him. You're going to get Ramsey. There's no question. Is it Ramsey? Is it Pennix? It's going to be Ramsey. Now, Ramsey, I think, is a little bit – he's much more durable than Pennix, which is something that we've obviously seen this season. And I think he can run the ball a little bit better. Pennix has been hesitant to run the ball at times. And with his injury history, I can't really blame him. I want to be wanting him to run the ball and put himself in harm's way that much either. But I do think Ramsey offers a little bit more in the running game because of that. But, I just think, like you said, I think the game planning aspect of it's a big deal as well. And I just think the offense is going to be relatively limited in what they can do moving forward without Pennix in there. And I think that could hurt them, especially with the defenses they have to play over the next couple of weeks in Penn State and Michigan, 2 of the top defenses in the Big Ten.
Yeah, and we'll talk more about the Penn State game next week on our Penn State preview show. One thing I wanted to bring up before we get off here is Florida State, I heard, was interested in Tom Allen. I hear all these people are interested in Tom Allen. I don't think anybody's interested in Tom Allen. I think Tom Allen is the coach at Indiana.
Yeah, I think there's a good news situation with Tom Allen when he was hired. And one of those is if he works out, if Tom Allen gets in here and turns Indiana around and does all the stuff he's claimed, this is what I want to do, then I think the good news with Indiana is he truly wants to be here. This is his school. He's grown up around Indiana his entire life. This is where he wants to be. As long as Indiana is paying him what he's worth, I can't see him ever leaving Indiana, even if a big school like, Florida State that has a rich history comes calling for him. I just can't see it happen. I think this is where Allen wants to be. You can see the passion he has for Indiana football pretty much every time he talks. And granted, I don't think it's just a situation where Tom Allen doesn't want to leave. I would be very surprised if Tom Allen was who Florida State went after. Seriously, yeah. I don't see that happening. I don't think.
Well,
that's
number one,
be the guy
you had
a
couple losing seasons, and then you had a 16-46 of the 7 teams they've beaten. Now, if he goes out and he beats Penn State, Michigan, and Purdue and goes 10-2, maybe the conversation changes.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think, and let's give credit to Tom Allen. I'm going to give a little bit of credit to Tom Allen here. where, you've lost to Ohio State, lost to Michigan State on the road, and even that Michigan State game, I think if you look at how they lost, that's going to be when you look back and say we should have had that one. But, they've taken care of the teams they should take care of, and while that might not seem like a huge thing for Indiana football, they really haven't been able to do that, the last few years. And there's been some times where teams would look at Indiana as part of those, okay, that's a bad team we beat. Now Indiana's kind of put themselves out of that conversation where, yes, they're beating the teams they should beat, but they're no longer in the conversation of that easy game team that, other teams are looking at, okay, we should beat that team. So they've at least improved in that aspect, and they're winning games they should win. They're winning road games, which has never been easy no matter who Indiana's playing when you look at their recent history. So they've improved from that standpoint, but, especially a school like Florida State, they're going to want to go get a big-name guy, a guy that's going to excite the fan base and a guy that they're going to look at and say, okay, we need to get back not just to being a solid football team, but being a national powerhouse. And as much as I love Tom Allen, love what he's done for this team this season, turnaround he seemingly has Indiana in, he's not that guy that's going to, put you on the map nationally and put you back in the, national championship conversation, at least right now. So I just can't see that happening. I don't think Tom Allen wants to leave. And I don't think Florida State's going to look at Tom Allen as one of their top targets either.
No, they may not have a choice by the time they're done, though, because I don't think Florida State's the job it used to be. Now, I do think a coach that they could lose is offensive coordinator Kalen DeBoer. I think he's done a great job this year, and I think that's a guy you very well could lose.
Yeah, I think if you're Indiana, you try to find a way to get him. Try to find a way to get him to stay here, whether that's increase his salary big time or, whatever you need to do. But, when you look at Indiana's team, they've scored 30-plus points, in 6 consecutive games now.
Yeah, they're the number 15 passing offense in the country.
Yeah, no, the offense has been absolutely fantastic all season long, and that was not the case last year. Now, I think part of that is you had Pennix in there playing a lot of the times. I think he's a much more dynamic player. And part of that, though, is also, Ramsey has looked significantly better in this offense than what he's looked the last couple of years. So, when you get situations like that, you've got to say, okay, part of that's because we have an offensive coordinator who's just calling a great game plan right now. So, I'm sure he's going to be in the conversation for a lot of coaching jobs. It'll be interesting to see if any legitimate Power 5 teams are in that conversation.
Well, it doesn't have to be a Power 5 team. How about this one? What if Mark D'Antonio decides to be the AD or he gets fired, and all of a sudden maybe Luke Fickell leaves Cincinnati?
Yeah.
That is the thing that concerns me with DeBoer. You get one of those AAC teams, and the AAC is better than the ACC this year, even though they're not a Power 5. But, you get a program like Cincinnati, that's a program where it's proven you can move guys on. Butch Jones went to Tennessee. Brian Kelly went to Notre Dame. It's a program just beneath the big-time programs. But it's also a program right now that is ranked in the top 20, which Indiana's not.
Yeah. No, I think that's a very real threat to look at when you look at a team like Cincinnati. And, that's a team Indiana has on their schedule here in a few years. So that could be a team where, you could look at it and Indiana might have to play them. And I know from watching this offense, he's obviously unproven as an offense or as a head coach, but I know from what he's done with his offense, that would be a scary game to play him. And I think, he's going to be in some conversations for some head coaching jobs, and rightfully so. He should be. What he's done with Indiana's offense is fantastic. But, if I'm Indiana, you just got to find a way to entice him to stay. Now, I'm not saying, there's an easy way to do that, especially if it comes to a school like Cincinnati who wants him. Your hands may be tied. There's only so much you may be able to do at that point. But if you're Indiana, if someone's going to come calling for a head coaching job, especially like a MAC school or another smaller team, if that's, if those are the teams chasing them, you need to give that guy a pay raise. You need to do everything you can in your power to entice this guy to stay if he's even considering, if he's torn even a little bit. You've got to do everything in your power to get him to stay, to get him.
You can pay him enough to make it good for him to stay there. If it's against a MAC team.
Yeah.
If it's against a Cincinnati, they're going to offer him $3.5 million, and you're not going to be able to pay your offensive coordinator that. Well, you can, but they won't.
Yeah. Well, when you look at Indiana's coaching salaries, we know it's not exactly the most, they haven't sold out a ton of money for the coaching staff even right now. Tom Allen is the lowest paid coach in the Big Ten. I think he's like 60th or 70th, somewhere in that range
What does he
nationally.
make,
So it's not like
anyways?
Indiana. $1.8 million is his salary.
Luke Fickell makes more than that at UC.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, so Indiana is not paying top dollar for coaching staff. So, you know, when you look at, hey, we need to pay DeBoer a raise, and I agree, I think you're also going to have one coming for Tom Allen after the year he's had as well. I mean, he's the lowest paid coach in the Big Ten. You know, I don't think he's exactly proven that he's, you know, a great coach and you need to lock him up for 10 years or whatever. But I think for him to be the lowest paid coach in the Big Ten, that's just absurd. That's going to change. I would guarantee you after this season, he's going to get a pay raise. So it's not just DeBoer you're looking at with a pay raise. It's probably going to be coming for Tom Allen as well.
Yeah, and I think to get a really nice pay raise, he needs to win at least one of these next two out of three overall. If he can do that, especially if he can put them in the Citrus Bowl on New Year's Day or something like that, I think that's a huge game changer. All right, Cole, anything else you want to bring up before we wrap it up?
Yeah, you know, I think just the only thing I would say is just, you know, I think I agree with you. Right now, you know, you're looking at 7 wins. You've secured a winning season for the first time since 2007. You know, the program's in great shape, but I think, like you said, they have not really secured a game-changing victory or season or program-changing victory. They've beaten the teams they need to beat. The next 2 games, Penn State and Michigan, that's a chance to really get a signature win and win that can really change a program. So those will be 2 huge games coming up. I'm excited to see how they do in those.
Yeah, because if they beat Penn State and get to 8 wins, it's probably going to put them in the top 25. And then, you know, you beat Purdue, you win a bowl game, you finish the season in the top 20, top 25. That's a game changer. That's what they need. All right, Cole, you want to tell everybody where they can find you?
Yeah, you can find me at Twitter at ColeHanna5. And also you can keep track of my articles over at thegruelingtruth.com as well.
All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up for today. I want to remind you, you can come back next Wednesday or Thursday. Just follow us on Twitter. We will have an Indiana-Penn State preview, so make sure you keep an eye out for that. You can hear all of our shows on iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, Spreaker, Stitcher, Spotify, wherever you find podcasts. You'll find The Grueling Truth. So for Cole Hanna, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.